Today's video, we're going to be taking a look at a new stack from Racerstar, and it's called the Tai Chi, and hopefully I'm pronouncing this correctly. Now, this is a 20 by 20 stack, and it has some crazy features, and I think I know the company that's actually doing this for Racerstar. So with that being said, let's get started. So before we get into the details, let's just take a quick look at some of the things they provide you in the package here, which are an XT30, some 14 gauge wires for an XT60. This is also provided. The connector that's going to connect the 4-in-1 ESC to the flight controller, which is this right here. And two low ESR capacitors. We have a 220 microfarad, 35 volt, and we also have a, I think 1000 here. Yeah, 1000 microfarad, 35 volt. These are pretty good low ESR capacitors. I have tested these before, and they perform really great. And also they give us some nylon nuts and some screws and stuff, and also some rubber O-rings. Nothing special for the dampening, but it is using an MPU 6000 gyro, so that's good in that perspective. So let's start off with the ESC here. Now this is a 20 by 20 stack. Keep that in mind. The footprint here that it takes from, the longest edge is around 38 millimeters. So think of it as a 38 millimeter board here, just in a square. So that is, 38 millimeters here, 38 millimeters here. So it is kind of wide here, and it's really difficult to tell how it would fit in a frame. But usually some frames would have standoffs like right next to the mounting holes for 20 by 20, and this might be a really great alternative to kind of fit that area. Now it is on the heavy side. Both of these together are roughly 25.3 grams. So keep that in mind as well. Now it does have a fat heatsink on the ESC. It's really, really massive here. And if we pop this open, what we will find is there is a shunt resistor in there. Now this is a BLHeli32 ESC as well, so keep that in mind as well. And it's rated up to a 6S. However, personally, I would not put this on a dedicated 6S setup, especially if it's a 5-inch, because the FETs they're using are pretty tiny. But I understand why they went with such a massive heatsink here. It's in order to keep those tiny FETs cool and be able to handle much more current. So keep that in mind. This would be like a nice 4S build, I would say. A pretty good 4S build here. Now, and again, it is a BLHeli32 ESC, so you'll have RPM filtering. And the way this is supposed to be set up in your quadcopter is like this. The battery leads will be in the back, and this connector would be up in the front. Now, if you didn't want to use a connector, they also have these broken out for you down here. So if you had a different flight controller for some reason, you can easily do that here. VIN, which should be V out, I would say. This is the raw battery voltage that's going to be coming in from the battery, which will be coming out here. For example, if you wanted to power up your flight controller, such as this one, then that's how you give it power. But make sure your flight controller can take battery voltage, because there is no 5-volt regulator, and this one does take up to a 6S. So keep that in mind when connecting this. Then we also have ground, and then motors 1 through 4. Current, because it has one shunt resistor, so you don't have separate current reading for each ESC here, which is again a shame for all BLHeli32 ESCs nowadays, which they don't have that. And we also have TX here for telemetry, RPM reading, all these types of things. So that is right there on the end. Other than that, it's pretty basic. And as you can tell, what they've done here is they were using that modular system, or the double board system, which is the main logic is soldered directly onto the board that's handling all the power delivery here. You can kind of see that right there. And so far, they've been proving themselves to be pretty good in that perspective, because what this allows is it allows much bigger traces for the power to be delivered. So just consider it as bigger wire in there to enable more power to go down to the motors, which is overall obviously very good. You get better power delivery, less resistance, which means less heat, and that is always something you want to look for. And I think it's a pretty great choice. It's something different than usual. I'm pretty sure a lot of people will not like this. Now let's move to the flight controller. The flight controller as well is taking this whole round shape here, and I think the company that's actually making these or OEMing these for Racerstar is HGLRC, because it just carries the same packaging characteristics and even some of the build quality here. It's actually doing pretty good. And again, they're not using edge plating, which is kind of a shame. I would kind of expect that here. So it's not using edge plating. That's a much more expensive process. They are using edge plating, however, for the main battery terminals, which is a good thing. So that's something nice to see here. Now let's go ahead and cover the overall flight controller and how we would go about connecting this. Right now, we're going to start with the receiver. How would you connect this receiver? Now, if we're using iBus, where we would want to connect our receiver is going to be R1. RX1 to be exact. Now RX1 is right here, and that's going to be for the iBus signal. Keep that in mind. Next, we're going to need both 5 volt and a ground. So we would actually skip this one and we would go here and we would grab our 5 volt and our ground. So our red wire would go here, our black wire would go here, our iBus signal would go right there. And if you had S-Bus, then you'd want to connect that right here and you should be good to go. And the 3.3 volt regulator is also broken out for Spectrum, which is the pad right next to the 5 volts, which would be this one right here. This is going to be the 3.3 volts ground, and then Spectrum, you would go ahead and I think go to RX1. Now, if you also wanted an RSSI pad, then what you can do is go to the edge, drop 4. This is a dedicated RSSI pad, which can be rerouted to do anything else if you wanted it to. And it's a really nice addition if you're using something with dedicated RSSI. Now, the video transmitter part. So the video transmitter part is this area right here. And it's actually very well thought through because they give you both 5 volt ground and the telemetry, or sorry, smart audio even broken out for you. So the way you would set this up, for example, let's start with a battery voltage video transmitter. That means a non 5 volt video transmitter. So where you'd want to get your power is would be right here. This would be the red wire of battery voltage right there. Then obviously we need ground, so it's going to be the black wire, which would be the one right under it. And then now we have power for our video transmitter. Next is our signal, which would be the yellow line coming in from the video transmitter, which will go right here. And if you have smart audio, it would go right here, which is a TX2, which would be UART2 for your smart audio protocol. Now, if you had a 5 volt video transmitter, instead of going to the battery, for the red wire going to the battery here, it would actually go here, and that would be your 5 volt for your video transmitter. For example, if you're building a micro and you have one of those 5 volt video transmitters, that's where you'd want to power that up. And that basically covers both the receivers and as well as the VTXs. So now for the camera part, which is going to be in the front here. Again, very well thought through. I really like seeing that. You'll also get the option to use battery voltage up here or 5 volts. So let's start with the 5 volts. So the 5 volts would be this right here. So that would be the red wire for your camera. This would be ground, which would be the black wire for your camera. So this way we'd have our power. Next, if you had your camera OSD, if you want to do camera OSD control, you'd install that there. But if you don't know what that is, just ignore it and install your yellow wire right here. This is where the yellow wire would go to your camera. And again, yellow wire here, red wire here, and black wire here for the camera. Now, if for some reason you wanted to give battery voltage, then you would put the red wire to this top one right here. This would be actually battery voltage. And again, this would be ground here. So that would cover your camera. So now let's just say you wanted to install a buzzer. What you want to do is you want to put the ground side of the buzzer right into that middle pad right here. And then you're going to want to put the positive side right there. And that would give you your buzzer to be installed correctly by default. Next, if you wanted to install, for example, RGB LEDs, your RGB LED signal wire would go here on LED. Next, we would give it 5 volts and the ground would be right there. And then you should be set right there. Now, they also have a UART3 broken out for you, which would be this one, which would be RX3. And we also have TX3. We also have the I2C protocol, which is the SDA and SCL for GPS and any kind of sensor you want to use, a magnometer possibly. So they have that even also broken out for you, which again is really nice. Some GPSs use a UART, and this is why they are all 4 of these next to each other, because some GPSs will have the GPS information on a UART, which for example would be these two, and it would have a magnometer, and it would output to the SCL and SDA here. So and again, very nice and very well thought through for all cases, but I don't know if this is compatible on iNav, but it's a really nice feature that they have that set up for you. And well, that's it for this flight controller, guys. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll have everything linked down below. Come join my Patreon. I'm gonna have all these stuff up for giveaway very soon. I have a bunch of premium stuff for giveaway at the end of the month, and new Patreons obviously get their own special giveaway, which is between I think 8 people now. So it's gonna be, you have a higher probability of winning, and my other normal Patreons have around 10 to 12 giveaways this month. So yeah, well, everything's linked down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out, guys.